Infidelity leaves deep scars, shaping the way we approach love and trust. For those who have experienced betrayal, moving forward often feels like navigating through a minefield of doubts and insecurities. Yet amidst this darkness, there can be a chance for redemption, healing, and even the discovery of true partnership. This was the case for Shannon and me, two souls who had been broken by the same pain but found each other in the process. What began as a quest for revenge turned into something deeper, a bond that neither of us expected but both desperately needed. This is our story. It's 9 p.m. on a Saturday night, and I find myself alone at a local bar nursing my first beer. I've been here for about half an hour, silently reflecting on the odd reality of my situation. My casual partner, Naomi, is out with another man tonight, seeking something intimate, with the promise that she'll return and share all the details when she's done. Strange, right? What makes it even more complicated is that this entire arrangement was her idea, and somehow I agreed to it. Let me introduce myself properly. My name is Ken Singleton. On the surface, I'm just your average Midwestern guy, born and raised in a small rural town not far from Omaha. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and life moved at a slower, more peaceful pace. My parents, Paul and Linda, had the kind of relationship I admired. They weren't perfect, but their marriage was stable and full of love. They instilled solid values in me and my younger brother, values like integrity, hard work, and loyalty. Growing up, I always thought I'd follow a similar path. I wanted a relationship like theirs, the kind that stood the test of time. That's why when I went off to college at the University of Nebraska, I wasn't out chasing casual flings. No, I was looking for something real, something lasting. That's when I met Naomi. Naomi Simpson was stunning, at least in my eyes. She had this vibrant energy about her, with sparkling green eyes and a bright smile that could light up a room. We met in a freshman language class, where the professor had us sit in alphabetical order. That's how Simpson ended up next to Singleton. It felt like fate. We hit it off immediately, and I couldn't believe someone as beautiful as her was interested in me. Our relationship blossomed quickly. We spent almost every day together, whether studying at the library or grabbing coffee at the student union. By the time junior year rolled around, we moved in together. I was certain she was the one. We got married shortly after graduation, in a big church ceremony in Lincoln. It was everything I'd hoped for. Our families were there, all our friends. We were a picture-perfect couple. After our honeymoon, we settled into life in Omaha. Naomi worked as a nurse in the emergency room, while I landed a job as a civil engineer at a local firm. Life seemed perfect, at least for a while. But as the years went by, I started to notice cracks forming in our marriage. Naomi worked the night shift at the hospital, and while I initially didn't mind the solitude, it began to wear on me. We spent less and less time together, and when we did, she was always too tired or distracted to engage in anything meaningful. Our once vibrant love life dwindled to quick kisses as she rushed out the door. And any time I brought up the idea of starting a family, she shut me down, insisting she wasn't ready to give up her career. It was around this time that I began to feel restless. Our marriage wasn't what I thought it would be, and I felt like I was losing Naomi bit by bit. So I tried to fix things. I planned a romantic weekend getaway to a bed and breakfast in Iowa, hoping that some time away from the grind of work would reignite the spark between us. But when I surprised Naomi with the idea, she didn't react the way I'd hoped. Instead of excitement or gratitude, I got reluctance. It was as if she wasn't even interested in trying anymore. That's when things took a sharp turn. One night, after a particularly long shift, Naomi sat me down in our living room. She looked exhausted but determined, like she had made some sort of decision. What came next blindsided me. "I think we need to shake things up," she said. I waited, unsure of what she meant. She went on to explain how she felt disconnected, not just from me, but from life in general. She wanted to explore things, new experiences, new people. I didn't know what to say. It felt like a punch to the gut, but instead of arguing, I listened. She proposed an open relationship. She wanted to keep our marriage intact, but also pursue other connections. As crazy as it sounded, a part of me, the part that feared losing her entirely, agreed to it. Maybe I was hoping this phase would pass, or maybe I was just too tired to fight. And that's how I ended up here, in this bar, while Naomi is out with someone else. The bitterness of the situation stings, but I remind myself that I agreed to this. I allowed it. A twisted sense of revenge mixed with desperation led me down this path. As I finish my beer, I can't help but wonder, how did it come to this? How did my once perfect marriage devolve into this strange, disconnected mess? And where do we go from here? There's no clear answer. And maybe that's the hardest part. A knot tightened in my stomach, signaling that my marriage was on the brink of facing its first real challenge. "Ken, this is going to be difficult," Naomi began softly, her voice filled with hesitation. "I hate that we're having this conversation, but it's necessary." She swallowed hard, diverting her gaze before continuing. "I don't think I'm in love with you anymore. I still care about you, and a part of me always will, but I've realized that maintaining romantic love for you is no longer possible." Her words hit me like a freight train. My heart sank, weighed down by the realization that the woman I had envisioned spending the rest of my life with didn't share the same sentiment. Anger started to rise within me, but I knew that losing my temper wouldn't help. I needed to understand. Calmly, I asked, "Naomi, how long have you felt this way? I've noticed a shift between us since we first got married. What changed?" Naomi let out a deep sigh, finally meeting my eyes. "Ken, I don't know if anything has changed. I'm not sure I ever felt the same kind of love for you that you do for me," she said, her voice trembling with guilt. "It sounds horrible, I know, and I never wanted to hurt you. You've always been an incredible man, full of love and kindness, and I thought I would eventually grow to reciprocate that. But now, I just don't think that's possible." Her confession left me reeling, my mind scrambling to comprehend that our marriage might have been a lie from the start. My hands trembled as I sat on the couch, my anger simmering beneath the surface. My next words were sharp, laced with the bitterness I couldn't contain. "So, what? You found someone else? Someone you think you love more than me?" Naomi hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Ken, there is someone else. We've been talking, and it seems like we share a deeper connection, a more compatible outlook on life than you and I do." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "How long does it take for two people to align on life philosophies?" I spat out, my thoughts immediately racing to her late shifts at the hospital. Was it someone she met there? A doctor, maybe? My next question came out in a tone barely disguising my fury. "So, you're telling me you've fallen for some young doctor while I've been here being faithful to you?" Naomi shook her head quickly. "No, Ken, it's not like that. He's not a doctor. He's actually our tax accountant. You're the one who suggested we hire him." I stared at her, speechless. "The tax accountant?" I asked, incredulous. She nodded, clearly ashamed. "Yes. I didn't plan for this to happen. You asked me to handle the taxes so you wouldn't have to miss work, and it was strictly professional at first. But over time, we started talking more, getting to know each other. We had lunch together occasionally during tax season. It was just business, but I felt something shift. Eventually, I realized that I cared about him, more than I should. And as hard as it is to admit, he felt the same. My heart ached as her words sank in. This wasn't some fleeting infatuation, this was real, and it had been going on for longer than I wanted to admit. The last remnants of my anger flared as I asked the one question I dreaded the most. "Does he satisfy you more than I do?" Tears welled up in Naomi's eyes as she shook her head. "Ken, please, it's not about that. I haven't been intimate with him yet. I didn't want to hurt you even more by crossing that line while we were still married. I never wanted to cause you pain." Her words did little to calm the storm brewing inside me. I didn't know whether to believe her or not. The agony of betrayal was almost unbearable. Still, a small part of me wanted to fight for what we had. I stood up, walked over to her, and looked into her eyes. "Naomi, are you sure about this? Is there any chance you're wrong? Maybe it's just a passing attraction. We can work through this. I'm willing to fight for us, for what I thought we had. She moved closer, resting her head on my shoulder, her voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry, Ken. I've thought about this for a long time, and there's no turning back now. Please don't hate me. I don't want to hurt you any more than I already have. I pulled away from her and walked into the bedroom. I grabbed 2 suitcases and began packing. A part of me expected her to follow, to stop me, but she didn't. She let me pack in silence. After I finished, I carried the bags out to the car, knowing I'd have to come back for the rest later. As I made my way to the door, Naomi stood there crying. I paused, wondering if her tears meant she still felt something for me, but I couldn't be sure. Are you going to start the divorce proceedings, or should I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. Through her tears, Naomi replied, No, I'll handle it. It's the least I can do. I promise I won't make this any harder than it already is. Just let me know where you're staying so I can send the papers. I nodded, unable to muster any more words. And then I left, walking away from the life we had built together, unsure of what lay ahead, but knowing that nothing would ever be the same. As I left my house for the final time, my emotions were a tangled mess of resignation and regret. I had walked through these familiar halls countless times, but this last walk felt different, heavier. Memories of questioning everything, my self-worth, my abilities as a husband, my attentiveness, and even my expectations for the future, overwhelmed me. When did her love fade? Why didn't I see it coming? These questions had become my constant companions since she served me the divorce papers. The legal process was surprisingly smooth. Nebraska's no-fault policy didn't allow for much fighting, and while friends encouraged me to go after more, I knew it wasn't worth it. Maturity, or maybe just exhaustion, kept me from dragging things out. There was a 60-day waiting period, followed by another 30 days before the divorce was finalized. Neither of us could remarry for 6 months, but that was the last thing on my mind. I had no interest in marriage, or love for that matter. Instead, I cocooned myself in my new apartment, nursing the deep wounds that my marriage's end had inflicted. My family and friends rallied around me, encouraging me to move forward. They were right. I needed to shake off the self-pity and embrace life again. Slowly but surely, I began to emerge from my shell. One night, I stumbled into a trendy sports bar near my new apartment. At first, it was just a place to pass the time, but eventually, it became a sanctuary. I started to find solace in the companionship of others, watching games, and relishing the camaraderie that had been missing from my life. That's where I met Shannon. I wasn't looking for anything romantic when I first noticed her behind the bar. She had this infectious smile that brightened the room, and her energy was magnetic. Everyone loved her, patrons, their wives, even the regulars. Shannon made everyone feel special. For the first time since my divorce, I found myself genuinely smiling again. She didn't just serve drinks, she created an atmosphere that made people feel welcome, and I began to gravitate toward her warmth. One quiet Wednesday evening, after months of small talk and casual banter, Shannon approached me directly. "All right, Ken," she said with a curious smile. "You've been coming here for a while now, and I've got to know, what's your story? What brought you here?" I had recounted the story of my divorce to family and friends, so sharing it with Shannon felt natural. As I spoke, she listened with genuine empathy, occasionally asking questions. She wasn't just being polite, she cared. When I finished, she placed her hand on mine and said softly, "I'm really sorry, Ken. It's tough, but it's going to get better. Trust me, it will." There was something comforting about her words, even though they seemed a little harsh at first. Sensing my reaction, she opened up about her own life. Shannon had been married too. She met her husband in college, and he pursued a career in Kansas City while she gave up her studies to marry him. For a while they were happy, but it all unraveled when he admitted to having an affair. His assistant was pregnant with his child. She left him immediately and ended up faring well in the divorce, receiving alimony but not much else. Now she was bartending, having dropped out of school and lacking other career options. I could see the remnants of the pain in her eyes, though it had been 2 years since her own divorce. Still, she had moved on in many ways, finding contentment in her current life. Shannon and I continued to talk more frequently, and over time my pain started to ease. She became a regular part of my healing process. Though I wasn't ready to date again, I couldn't ignore the growing attraction between us. It wasn't just about her beauty. There was something deeper in her personality that drew me in. As the weeks passed, I noticed that Shannon paid me more attention than she did the other regulars. Maybe it was my imagination, but she always seemed to make time for me, coming over to chat when the bar wasn't too busy. I even had my designated spot at the bar, and Shannon would often keep it reserved for me before I arrived, like I was her own special guest. Almost a year after my divorce, two major events changed my life. The first was that I finally decided to get back into the dating world, setting a New Year's resolution to put myself out there. The second was that Shannon and I started to get closer. One Friday evening, feeling bold, I asked her point blank if she was open to having a boyfriend. Her response was calm but honest. "Ken, I really like you," she said, smiling, "but I'm not looking for a relationship right now. My last one drained me, and I'm not sure I'll be ready anytime soon." Her words stung, but I appreciated her honesty. I pressed her gently, asking if she meant she wasn't interested in any form of companionship. She chuckled softly and leaned in, lowering her voice. "I'm not saying I'm completely closed off to grown-up fun," she said with a playful smirk. "I've got a couple of friends with benefits for that sort of thing. It's all just physical, no emotions involved. It keeps things simple." I was taken aback, but intrigued. She made it clear that while she wasn't looking for love, she wasn't against casual arrangements. Shannon's openness surprised me, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for that kind of dynamic, but I couldn't deny my growing attraction to her. As we continued our conversation, I found myself contemplating the possibility of something unconventional, a new chapter in my life that I hadn't expected. Whether it was just casual or something more, Shannon had helped me start moving forward again, and for that, I was grateful. Ken had always enjoyed his Friday nights at the local bar, a comfortable routine where he could relax after a long work week. But this Friday was different. Shannon, the bartender he'd known for a while, had thrown him a curveball earlier in the evening. Instead of the casual small talk they usually shared, she'd hinted at something more, a friends with benefits arrangement. Ken had never considered the idea before. Ever since his divorce from Naomi, his love life had been non-existent, but Shannon's suggestion had lingered in his mind all evening. He wasn't seeing anyone, hadn't been intimate with anyone other than himself, and Shannon had made it clear she was open to the idea. He didn't see any harm in it, and as the bar began to clear out, he realized he was curious. He stayed, something he didn't usually do, and noticed Shannon glancing his way from time to time, as if she knew he was debating whether to take her up on the offer. About 15 minutes before closing, Shannon caught his eye, and a knowing smile spread across her face. She approached him directly, leaning against the bar. "So, are you staying late because you're curious about what a friends with benefits arrangement is like?" she asked with a playful grin. Ken smiled back a little sheepishly. "Maybe," he replied. She chuckled and went back to attending the last few customers. When she returned, the bar was nearly empty, and she took a seat next to him, her tone more serious now. "Here's how it works," she began. "We can go to your place or mine. It doesn't really matter. We have sex, maybe spend the night together, maybe not. We're not exclusive, and we don't talk about seeing other people. But there's one rule, no catching feelings. I think you're a good guy, and it seems like it's been a while for you. I'm willing to give this a try, but we'll need to talk afterward to make sure you're comfortable with the boundaries." She gave him a moment to think it over while she wrapped things up with the last patrons. By the time she returned, Ken had made up his mind. He nodded as she approached again. Shannon smiled, embracing him before their lips met in a kiss that left no room for doubt. Any hesitation Ken had disappeared as their bodies pressed together. After a brief pause, Shannon smirked. "That was a test, and you passed." Ken grinned, excitement bubbling up inside him. "My place is just a block away," he said. "I've got a big, clean bed, and I'll take you back to your car in the morning if you want to stay." Shannon didn't say a word. She simply took his hand and led him to the door. Once they made sure it was locked, she looked at him and nodded for him to lead the way. They hurried to his apartment, and despite Ken's initial nerves, it had been over a year since he'd been with someone like this. The kiss they shared once inside melted away his apprehension. In the bedroom, clothes were quickly shed, and Ken found himself marveling at the beautiful woman standing before him. That night, they made love twice before drifting off to sleep. The next morning, Shannon woke him up with another round of passionate sex. Ken couldn't help but admire her confidence and energy, realizing how long it had been since he'd felt this alive. Over breakfast, which Ken cooked while Shannon showered, they talked about the night before. Shannon sat at the table, grinning. "So," she asked, "how was your first experience with a friend with benefits? Think you want to keep this going?" Ken chuckled, feeling a bit more comfortable with the idea now. "Yeah, it was pretty great. I wouldn't mind doing it again." Shannon playfully punched his arm. "All right, but let's be real. Can you handle casual sex without any emotional strings? You've only had sex with a relationship attached since college, right?" Ken hesitated for a moment. He hadn't thought about it deeply, but he knew he wasn't ready for another relationship just yet. "Let's just say, when can we do it again?" he joked. For the next few weeks, Ken found himself falling into a new routine. He and Shannon would meet up at the bar or at his apartment, enjoy each other's company, and have incredible sex. But what surprised Ken most was how much he enjoyed just talking to Shannon, hanging out at the bar and laughing together. It wasn't just about the sex. It felt like something deeper was forming, though he wasn't ready to admit that to himself just yet. One night, however, everything changed. Ken was at the bar enjoying a drink while Shannon worked when he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned around to see a woman with a familiar face. It took him a moment, but then he recognized her. "Ken Singleton, right?" she asked, smiling. "I'm Anita Peterson. I work as a nurse in the ER with your ex-wife." Ken nodded, his memory clicking into place. He'd met Anita a few times at Christmas parties back when he and Naomi were still together. She'd always been friendly, maybe even a little too friendly, but he'd never thought much of it. They talked for a while, Anita expressing her sympathy for his divorce. Then she dropped something that caught Ken off guard. "You know," she said, "I've read that couples in open marriages have a higher divorce rate than those who are monogamous." Ken blinked, confused. "Open marriage?" he repeated, unsure where she was getting that idea. Anita just smiled, but something in her tone made Ken wonder if there was more to the story. He found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about his marriage to Naomi, and as the night went on, a nagging curiosity grew inside him. Had Naomi been involved in something he wasn't aware of? Or was it just a misunderstanding? Whatever the truth was, Ken realized that his life had become far more complicated than he'd anticipated. And despite everything, he couldn't shake the growing connection he felt with Shannon, a connection that was supposed to be purely physical, but was quickly becoming something more. He carefully replied, "Well, I guess that's the risk you take." It was good while it lasted. Pausing for a moment, he added, "Did she ever talk about our relationship with you?" Anita's face lit up as she responded, "Oh, yes, she spoke about it quite often. I could see how she allowed you to have women over while she was at work. But what really struck me was when you mentioned the possibility of her enjoying the company of a doctor or technician during her breaks. It made sense to me. Whenever I saw her slipping into the on-call room with the night shift doctor, I couldn't help but think of you. I wondered if you had someone with you in bed those nights." He was speechless. The realization that his wife had been unfaithful, perhaps with more than one person, hit him like a ton of bricks. He had been completely oblivious. Any love he still held for her vanished instantly. How could he have been so blind? He berated himself for granting her such an amicable divorce, unaware of her betrayal at the time. Now, he suspected she had already been involved with the man she eventually left him for. Yet, despite the intense hatred that surged within him, he managed to keep his composure around Anita. He quickly recognized an opportunity for some form of payback. "So, when you were curious about me?" he asked with a sly grin. "Were you wondering if I wanted you to spend the night with me?" She blushed and replied softly, "Maybe. She always talked about how great you were." And I could see it too, especially since you were okay with her having some fun while she was away. I wouldn't have minded having a bit of that fun myself. This new development caught him off guard, but his focus remained on uncovering whether Anita was involved with anyone else. He didn't want to complicate things further if she was attached. What about you, Anita? Are you married or in a relationship? Anita smiled, shaking her head. No, still searching for the right one. That was a relief. Anita was attractive, and she represented a new experience for him, something he hadn't pursued before. He grinned. Well, Anita, no pressure. But I'm also not committed right now. If you're interested, maybe we could head back to my place and see if being in my bed is as appealing as you imagined. Her eyes sparkled, and she responded with a playful grin. Oh, that sounds lovely. I came here with friends, but I'm sure they wouldn't mind if you take me home. As they left, he noticed Shannon watching them from the bar. Her expression was hard to read, but it seemed different from usual. Could she be jealous of Anita? They had always agreed there would be no emotional attachment, and Shannon had been clear that they weren't exclusive. After spending a few hours with Anita, he found himself surprisingly satisfied. Despite her being blonde, which was a new experience for him, he found pleasure in watching her hair bounce as they were intimate. Around midnight, he left her place and decided to swing by the bar again, curious to see if Shannon was still there. When he arrived, Shannon didn't greet him in her usual manner. Instead, she simply brought him his usual beer without much conversation. It wasn't until half an hour later, just before closing time, that she finally approached and sat next to him. Did you have a good time? She asked, her tone neutral. He shook his head. Remember, we agreed not to discuss other relationships if this is going to work. She nodded, but he could tell it bothered her. He couldn't help but wonder if she had any other connections herself. If he ever saw her leaving with someone else, he might feel strongly too. Shifting the conversation, he said, Anita mentioned something that stirred up a lot of anger in me. Without intending to, he revealed that his ex-wife had been unfaithful during their marriage. Anita had unknowingly shared that Naomi, his ex, had been sneaking around with at least one ER doctor. Shannon's eyes widened as he recounted Anita's revelations, especially about Naomi deceiving her co-workers to cover up her inappropriate behavior with the doctors. As he finished speaking, his anger resurfaced, more intense than before. Shannon looked at him seriously. What do you plan to do about it? Are you just going to let it slide? He turned to her, feeling the heat of his rage. Had I known about this before the divorce, I wouldn't have been as kind as I was. But it's too late now. Demanding more in the divorce wouldn't change anything. Still, I want her to feel the pain I'm feeling now. They sat in silence for a few moments. Then Shannon reached out, placing her hand on his. So, you want her to understand the pain of betrayal? He paused, then nodded slowly. Yes, that's exactly what I want. She squeezed his hand, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I have a rather unconventional plan, but we'll need to work together. If it's successful, it could be the ultimate revenge. Are you interested? He was surprised by her words. If Shannon had been bothered by his evening with Anita, she was certainly over it now. Intrigued, he leaned in. Absolutely. Count me in. What's your plan? With a sly grin, Shannon leaned closer. If you want her to experience the pain of her partner cheating on her, we'll have to make sure it happens. Now, most of my friends with benefits are unattached guys. But there's one guy, he's married, and I can only think of one way to ensure he cheats on her. I need to seduce him. He was incredulous. The idea that Shannon would sleep with his ex-wife's new partner as part of a revenge plot was wild. You're serious? He asked, half laughing. Shannon's expression was deadly serious. You're not asking me to do this. I want to do it. Remember, I know what it's like to feel betrayed, too. Let's make her feel it. Ken sat in silence, the weight of his divorce hanging heavy in the air between him and Shannon. His mind raced as he processed her audacious plan. Why would you do this for me? He asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Why would you sleep with a stranger just to help me get back at Naomi? Shannon let out a long sigh, leaning back in her chair. Honestly, Ken, she began, I've got a soft spot for you. I hate seeing what Naomi did to you, and if this is how we can turn the tables, then I'm all in. Besides, she added with a smirk, I'm treating it like a one-time thing. Friends with benefits, but strictly for this purpose. Ken couldn't believe what he was hearing. Shannon was willing to seduce Naomi's new boyfriend, record the whole thing, and then send Naomi the video as proof that her new man was just as unfaithful as she had been. It was a stroke of genius, far beyond anything he could have come up with himself. He stared at her in shock. How could she go to such lengths for him? Look, Shannon continued, her voice softening. I know it's a lot, but I want to help you close this chapter. I'll treat this guy like a one-time fling, and when it's done, we'll send Naomi the video. It's that simple. Ken felt a knot form in his stomach. Shannon was right. It was simple, but the implications were huge. Do you even know who this guy is? Shannon asked. Didn't you mention he was the accountant who handled your taxes? If so, you should have his name somewhere on your old tax forms. Ken's eyes widened as he realized she was right. I never even thought to look, he admitted. I never cared who he was. Until now. Shannon, ever the strategist, leaned in closer. If your ex is still working nights, we can plan around her schedule. You can find out when she's working, and we'll set up our little rendezvous accordingly. Can you get that information? Ken hesitated. I think I can, he said slowly. My friend Anita works with Naomi. I suppose she could help me out, though I'm not sure what she'll think of all this. Shannon raised an eyebrow. Anita, huh? She muttered under her breath, a flicker of amusement passing across her face. Ken wasn't sure, but it sounded like she had said something about Anita having ulterior motives. He brushed it off as Shannon continued, her mind working fast. If he made a move on your wife during your tax prep, there's no reason to think he won't do the same with me. And trust me, I can be very convincing. Ken couldn't help but laugh, though the situation was far from funny. Shannon was bold, unapologetic, and fiercely determined. This year, she said with a wink, Mr. Wife-Stealer is going to prepare my taxes. And just like that, the plan was set. Shannon would use her charm to seduce Naomi's accountant, record their encounter, and deal the final blow to Naomi's new relationship. A few days later, Ken found the tax forms, and sure enough, Jerry Voren's name was plastered across them. The accountant had even stapled his business card to the front. It took Shannon no time at all to schedule her first appointment. She sent Ken a text with 2 pictures of her outfit for the meeting, one of a loose blouse paired with tight jeans, and the other of her bending over slightly, showing just enough to catch anyone's eye. Ken knew Jerry didn't stand a chance. The plan was set in motion. Ken reached out to Anita, who provided Naomi's work schedule. She was on a predictable 2-week rotation, making it easy to determine when she would be working late on a Friday night. Shannon kept Ken updated after each of her encounters with Jerry. She reported back after their first meeting, saying that Jerry was completely enthralled, unable to keep his eyes off her. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The chosen Friday finally arrived. Naomi was working her usual night shift, and Shannon had convinced Jerry to come over for dinner at her place. As Ken waited anxiously, his phone buzzed. It was Shannon. It's done, she texted. Meet me at the bar. Ken's heart pounded as he headed to the bar where they always met. When Shannon walked in, he could immediately tell something was off. She wasn't smiling, her usual confidence replaced with something heavier. She sat beside him at the bar, ordered a beer, and downed half of it in one go before turning to face him. It's done, she said quietly, her eyes clouded with something that resembled regret. I slept with him, and the video's crystal clear. There's no way Naomi can deny that her boyfriend is a cheater now. Ken should have been overjoyed. They had succeeded, but all he felt was an overwhelming urge to hold Shannon, to tell her how much he appreciated her for everything she'd done. Yet, seeing the look on her face, He knew this wasn't the right moment. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea how much this means to me." Shannon nodded, staring into her half-empty glass. "Yeah," she replied softly. "Let's just get this over with. Once we send her the video, it's done. Then we can both move on." But as Ken looked at her, he couldn't help but wonder if moving on would be as easy as Shannon thought. After all, everything had changed. It was 9 p.m. on a Saturday night, and I found myself alone at my favorite local bar, slowly nursing my first beer. I'd been sitting there for about half an hour, my mind swirling with thoughts. Meanwhile, Shannon, my friend with benefits, was out with another man. She had assured me she'd return afterward, eager to share all the intimate details of their night together. It was far from an ideal situation, but the odd part was that it had been her idea. And somehow, I'd agreed. I'm not the type of guy who enjoys the thought of being cuckolded. In fact, quite the opposite. But sometimes, when your mind is filled with thoughts of revenge, you find yourself making strange compromises. That was my situation. My name's Ken Singleton, and by all accounts, I'm just an average guy. I grew up in a small rural town not far from Omaha. It was close enough to enjoy the perks of city life, but still far enough to maintain a simpler, quieter existence. My parents were your typical Midwestern couple, loving, supportive, and always there for my brother and me, teaching us the importance of integrity and working hard without stepping on others to achieve our goals. Growing up, I admired my parents' marriage and knew I wanted something similar. When I went off to college in Lincoln, I wasn't like many of the other guys who were chasing casual hookups. I was looking for something deeper, a partner, a future wife. That's when I met Naomi Simpson, a stunning brunette studying nursing. I remember thinking she was way out of my league. She had these captivating green eyes, a charming smile with dimples, and soft curves that seemed to make her even more beautiful. We met during a freshman language class where we were seated alphabetically, meaning Naomi sat next to me. From the very first moment we exchanged a few words, I was hooked. Before long, we were spending time together after class, sharing sodas at the student union. What started as casual hangouts soon turned into a full-fledged relationship. We stayed together through all 4 years of college, moving in together by our junior year, and eventually getting married after graduation. Our wedding was in a large church in Lincoln, not far from where I grew up, and we settled down in Omaha. Naomi became an ER nurse while I landed a job as a civil engineer at a local firm. At first, things were good. Her job required her to work night shifts, which meant we didn't always get much time together, but when we did, it felt enough. For a while, I thought I had the perfect life, but over time, cracks started to show. After 10 years of marriage, I realized Naomi and I were drifting apart. I wanted to start a family, but she kept putting it off, prioritizing her career. She insisted she wasn't ready to give up her nursing job to raise children. I tried to be patient, but as the years passed, the thought of getting older without kids gnawed at me. On top of that, our intimacy began to fade. Where we used to spend at least a little time together before she went off to her night shifts, those moments became few and far between. She no longer wanted any distractions before work, and our time together dwindled to nothing but a quick kiss as she rushed out the door. I was still deeply in love with her, but I felt disconnected, lonely, and ultimately unsatisfied. One weekend, I decided to surprise Naomi with a romantic getaway to a bed and breakfast just across the border in Iowa. I thought it might help rekindle our connection. But when I told her the plan, her reaction was cold and distant. She guided me into the living room, asked me to sit, and what came next completely shattered me. Naomi confessed that she had been seeing someone else. She had fallen in love with another man. The revelation felt like a punch to the gut. I'd been faithful, patient, and understanding, yet she had betrayed me. The marriage I had once believed to be rock solid crumbled in an instant. I didn't know what to do, but after several long conversations, we decided to divorce. Naomi moved in with the other man, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my life. Months passed, and I tried to move on. That's when Shannon came into the picture. She had always been a friend, but after my divorce, Our friendship evolved into something more casual. I was hurt, and she was understanding. I didn't expect it to turn into anything serious, but it filled the void in my life. Until she suggested spending time with other men, and then telling me about it afterward. It seemed strange at first, but I was still drowning in my own bitterness over Naomi's betrayal, and I agreed. Maybe, in some twisted way, I thought it would help me heal, or maybe I just wanted to feel some sense of control again. But then something unexpected happened. After Shannon returned that night from her fling, she asked me to take her back to my apartment. She wanted to be with me. "I need you to erase that man from my memory," she said. "I crave you, Ken, not him." We spent the night together, and in those moments, I began to see something different in Shannon. This wasn't about revenge anymore. She wasn't just a casual fling or a friend with benefits. As the hours passed, I realized she had given me more than I'd ever expected. Her affection, her loyalty, and maybe even her heart. Then, not long after that night, Naomi called. She wanted to meet. I was hesitant, but curious. When we sat down at a small coffee shop near her hospital, she looked tired, worn down. She told me the man she had left me for had been unfaithful to her. They had broken up, and she regretted everything. She asked if there was any chance we could try again, saying she had made a terrible mistake. I sat there listening, feeling a sense of vindication. For so long, I had held on to the pain of her betrayal, but now I had moved on. I was with Shannon, and I was happy. I looked Naomi in the eye and told her that I had found someone else, someone who valued me in a way she never had. That was the last time I saw Naomi. I walked out of that coffee shop, leaving her behind in every sense. My final act of revenge was simply letting her know that I had moved on without her. Now, as Shannon and I lay together, I knew that I was ready for something real. She was more than just a way to get back at Naomi. She was someone I could see a future with, a future I never thought I'd have again. And as strange as it might sound, in that moment, I finally let go of the past and embraced what was right in front of me. Shannon was the person I wanted to be with, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. As I sat across from Shannon, her words hung in the air like a lifeline. Both of us have suffered from infidelity, but if you'll have me as your one and only, I promise I'll shield you from that pain for the rest of our lives. She kissed me again, soft and sincere, and I couldn't help but smile. I looked at her and asked, half joking, "Are you sure you can promise that? I mean, you still have to file your taxes every year, and there are plenty of accountants in the city eager to help you out." Shannon laughed, getting the joke. "Don't worry about that, Ken. No one fills out those long forms quite like you do." She gave me a playful grin, and then leaned in closer, rolling on to me and straddling me. This time was different. It wasn't just the two of us engaging in something casual, not friends with benefits anymore. For the first time, we made love as genuine partners, and it felt like the beginning of something lasting. That night was far from the end of our story. A couple of years after Shannon and I had built a solid relationship, one bound by shared experiences and trust, we found ourselves wrapped in a strange twist of fate. We were coming home from a night out, enjoying one of our favorite activities, dancing. The music had been electric, the drinks smooth, and we left the club in high spirits. But on the drive home, everything shifted. A drunk driver ran a red light and slammed into our car on the driver's side. The impact was jarring, and though the airbags deployed and protected us from serious harm, I was rattled enough to need a trip to the hospital. The paramedics insisted I ride in an ambulance, while Shannon stayed behind with the car, waiting for the police to finish the report. They promised to bring her to the hospital as soon as they were done. I was lying in the ambulance, dazed, still processing the crash, when we arrived at the emergency room. As the back door of the ambulance swung open, I saw her, Naomi, my ex-wife, wearing her familiar nursing scrubs. My heart stopped for a moment. The look on her face said everything. She hadn't expected to see me, and the surprise was laced with something more, feelings she clearly hadn't let go of. As the paramedics briefed her on the details of my accident, she stood silent, taking it all in. When they left, she hesitated before speaking. Instead of the usual warm greeting I'd expect from a nurse, Naomi asked bluntly, "Do you want me to find another nurse for you? Anita's not on duty tonight, but there are others who can take care of you." I shook my head. "No, Naomi. You're good at your job, and that's what I need right now. We had our time together, but those days are over. I trust you to take care of me. Nothing more, nothing less." She looked relieved, though the tension in the air was palpable. They decided to keep me for observation for a few hours just to be cautious, monitoring my vitals. Naomi stayed close by, overseeing the tests and quietly working. Not long after, Shannon arrived. She rushed into the room, her eyes scanning me to make sure I was all right, before planting a soft kiss on my lips. As she pulled back, her eyes flicked to Naomi, who stood by my bed, watching the interaction unfold. "Shannon, this is Naomi, my nurse and ex-wife. Naomi, meet Shannon, my girlfriend." The two women exchanged handshakes, though the atmosphere was far from casual. Naomi forced a polite smile. "Nice to meet you, Shannon." Shannon, ever the confident one, replied smoothly, "Likewise. Please take good care of him for me." The tension spiked as Shannon's words hung in the air like a silent claim staked on me, a line drawn. Naomi's smile faltered, and I saw something cross her face, confusion, recognition perhaps. She furrowed her brow, staring a little too long at Shannon. "You seem familiar," Naomi said slowly, searching Shannon's face. "Have we met before?" My heart leapt into my throat. I held my breath, waiting for Shannon's response. Without missing a beat, Shannon smiled, shaking her head. "I doubt it. I was in an indie film shot in Omaha a couple of years ago, but it didn't get much attention. Maybe you saw something about that?" Naomi frowned, still looking puzzled, but she shook her head. "No, I don't think that's it. I guess I'm just mistaken." With that, she turned and walked out of the room, heading toward the nurse's station. As soon as she left, I let out the breath I didn't realize I was holding. Shannon, always the playful one, flashed me a mischievous grin. She leaned down, her lips brushing against my ear. "Maybe I should have offered to send her a copy of the movie," she whispered with a laugh. God, I adored that woman. Even in the most awkward, surreal of moments, Shannon knew how to lighten the mood. And in that moment, as I watched her smile and felt the warmth of her presence beside me, I realized how lucky I was. We had both been through our share of pain, betrayal, and heartache, but now we were building something stronger, something unbreakable.